Now, the names of 65 teachers who were declared unsuitable to work with children will be included in the National Child Protection Register after they were found guilty of sexual misconduct. According to a News 24 report, the Basic Education Department by the 9 provincial education departments is sitting with a total of 1,824 misconduct cases for the period of April 2023 to March. Education Labour Relations Council Senior Manager for Dispute Services, Matlose Moela, joins us now to further unpack and discuss this. Ntate Moela, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Now, 65 teachers that have been struck off the ELRC roll this year alone, and the SA Council for Educators indefinitely deregistered 16 teachers between March and April of last year. Is there a growing prevalence of such behavior of sexual misconduct amongst educators?
Good evening, Katleo, and good evening to our viewers at home. Indeed, as the Education Labour Relations Council, we are receiving a great number of cases which are of allegations of sexual misconduct. And through our processes, quite a number of these educators are found guilty for having misconducted themselves in this area. And it's a growing concern for us as the Education Labour Relations Council, obviously even for the society. The numbers that you have just indicated, of course, you are talking about those from nationally in the Department of Education. But with us as Education Labour Relations Council, we are only dealing with sexual misconduct after the Department of Education have investigated the matter and have found that indeed there is some prima facie evidence that the educator has committed some sexual misconduct against learners.
So just staying on the issue of prevalence, with the cases that do get to your desk, is there a pattern with regards to the schools, the areas in which these educators are coming from? Is it more of the public schools, the private schools, or is it across the board?
Okay, to start off with, I must clarify the distinction in terms of public and private schools. That as the Education Labour Relations Council, we are only, in terms of jurisdiction and mandate, we are only dealing with public schools. In other words, these will be educators that are appointed and employed in terms of Employment of Educators Act. So those that are in the private schools, we are not dealing with them in terms of legislation.
Okay.
But as to the question of whether these are from rural or urban or even high school or primary schools, it cuts across. There's no real pattern as such, but it cuts across. There are cases where you find that learners from primary schools are sexually molested or violated by some educators, as well as those who are in secondary schools. So it cuts across. And in fact, it's even boys and girls. It's not like only limited to girls. So it cuts across in all spheres, you know.
Which is absolutely worrying. You also mentioned that a lot of these cases get to you only after the Department of Education has done their own set of investigations. How many fall through the cracks? Do you know of, in terms of the reporting, are even these numbers reflective of the true situation on the ground?
Look, yes, it's true that we only deal with the matters when the department has invested. In fact, in 2018, the parties to the Education Labour Relations Council, which are the teacher unions as well as the Department of Basic Education, concluded a collective agreement whereby they have agreed that for any matter where an educator, there's an allegation against an educator for sexual misconduct or allegation of sexual misconduct, such matters must be dealt with by the ELRC. In other words, the department will conclude their investigation. Once they are done, then they send the report to the ELRC. The ELRC is going to administer those cases for the department. In other words, we appoint the commissioner, the intermediary, the interpreters, and also find specialized venues where the children are able to testify without any kind of secondary trauma or victimization. And if you talk about the numbers, of course, we can see that the greatest challenge in this regard is that of underreporting. Because you can see certain problems. We are not saying that the cases must be a lot, but you can really see that some provinces will just have 1 or 2 cases, while the other provinces are having many cases, more than 10, and so on and so on. So that is, I think, as we look at the data that comes through, we really think that there might be some form of underreporting as far as these cases are concerned.
So just staying on the issue of reporting then, just in the interest of the viewers, what would be the processes for reporting such misconduct, and how does the ELRC also ensure that the allegations are thoroughly investigated? Do you even have that jurisdiction?
Not the jurisdiction to investigate, but in terms of reporting, it starts off there, down there at the school level, when an allegation of when a child who is molested then goes to an educator who then whom she confides to or in, and then or even the principal at school, then they report this to them, and then the principal must report the matter to the Department of Education, particularly the Labor Relations Directorate. Those are the people who have got the powers to investigate issues of misconduct. And in terms of Schedule 2 of Employment of Educators Act, it is very clear that Section 17 of the Act, it says that when an educator is found guilty for sexual related misconduct, that educator must be dismissed. But the investigation starts at school, the reporting starts at school. That's why we also encourage in terms of the criminal act or sexual related act, amended act, it says that any person who is aware that a child or a learner is being molested must report such to the police. So we also encourage department, apart from the fact that they send their reports to the ELRC, they must also report the matter at to the police, so that the two processes can go parallel, the criminal as well as the labor relations matter that then is dealt with by the ELRC.
And are there any instances where the department doesn't report it as a criminal case, where the ELRC would then have that responsibility to report to the police?
No, it's the responsibility of the Department of Education, that which falls within their jurisdiction to report when they send the report to us. So it's them who must report the matter there.
Right. And once you have found these teachers guilty and you've registered them, or rather deregistered them or struck them off your roll, and then they are then registered in the National Child Protection Register, what are the parameters in terms of where they can continue to practice beyond the South African borders?
Look, I think we must distinguish this. The ELRC, these teachers are not on the roll of the ELRC. They come to the ELRC as alleged perpetrators. So we do discipline on behalf of the department.
Right.
But then once we find them guilty, we send their names to Department of Social Development. Then the Department of Social Development is going to record their names in Part B of the Child Protection Register, so that any other person who wants to employ these alleged perpetrators, then he must vet them against that particular register. And then once he finds them, because they are being declared not to be fit to work with children, so they can't practice, because we also send the names again to SACE, which is South African Council for Educators, that then will also remove them from the register as educators. So they, without that license from South African Council for Educators, they cannot teach.
In your experience and just in your opinion, what do you think contributes to this high level of unethical behavior by teachers, especially during this time within the teaching environment?
Look, schools are microcosms of society. And you can see that the causes are indeed complex in the sense that they are deeply rooted in social, cultural, economic, and institutional factors. I say this because there's quite a number of things. From a social and cultural perspective, the issues of patriarchal gender relations is perpetuating some form of discrimination and inequality, particularly amongst the girls. And it really leads them to drop off. It really leads them to sometimes be infected with some form of disease. It denies them their fundamental rights of the rights to basic education. And it's really a serious problem that we think we must go to that extent of conscientizing, making the society aware of what is happening so that we can, by all means, try and prevent and, in fact, uproot these social ills which are encountered by the learners at school. You know that educators are acting in locus parentis. They have got a duty of care to the children, and it's very important. The profession is sacred, but there are these few rotten apples that are jeopardizing and damaging the reputation of the profession, and we must really deal with them from all angles, as we said, from both the criminal as well as in terms of we bar them from practicing as educators because they are really not fit to work with children.
Most certainly. Just lastly, in terms of it is a societal problem, are there any recommendations as a body that you do make to the Department of Basic Education with regards to perhaps teacher training programs that the teachers who are still in schools could go through in order to prevent more of these cases?
Of course, as a bargaining council, we have got awareness campaigns that we are rolling out. In fact, we train regularly the practitioners. These are employer representatives as well as trade union representatives so that they can go and, because these are members of unions, so they go and tell them. And we, in fact, also attend what we call principal seminars, wherein we conscientize the principal as heads of institutions, as the people who can really make strides and make change in their institutions, to talk about this in their assemblies, to talk about this in their staff rooms and warn educators now and then so that they can refrain from behaving in a manner and fashion that we see and which is intolerable and cannot be condoned at all.